Hello friends, myself Dr. Sanjay Mohan. So I am here to start with a series of lectures on strength of material, one of the core subjects of mechanical engineering. So this is my first lecture and here I will be introducing the subject before you all. So let's start with the presentation. So first of all, I would like to brief you all about mechanical engineering because this is very important. The structure of a subject shall be clear before you move onwards with the different subjects of that stream. So the basic map is very important. So basically, mechanical engineering has been categorized into different groups just to make the things simple. So here we have a design group, we have thermal and fluid group, we have production and manufacturing group, we have industrial group. And the subjects in the mechanical engineering stream have been categorized, most of the subject have been categorized under these groups. So some of the core subjects I will be just briefing you all about. So in design, some of the core subjects what we undertake in design group are engineering mechanics, strength of materials, theory of machines, machine design, and others also. Similarly, when you go to thermal and fluid group, we have thermodynamics, heat and mass transfer, fluid mechanics, fluid machine, thermal engineering, and other subjects. In production and manufacturing, some of the subjects are material science, manufacturing, machining process. And similarly, in industrial engineering, in industrial group, we have industrial engineering, supply chain management, project management, and similar subjects. So this is the very basic structure of mechanical engineering. So one should be well versed with these, at least these classifications, and then moving onwards in mechanical engineering becomes quite logical and simple. So there is a very famous statement which I would like to quote, and it is produce only after you check the physical and thermal strength of the material. So within this statement, you can check produce corresponds to production or industrial, physical corresponds to design related subjects, thermal corresponds to your thermal and fluid groups, fluid subjects. So this is more a realistic statement. So our main objective is to design something innovative, design something strong, which could be used further in various machines in automobiles. So for that, you have to ensure that whatever component you design, it is safe. Now that safety with respect to your strength or with respect to your thermal aspect, so depends upon the application. So let's move ahead. So there's some of the applications I would like to discuss here. Very general, very common applications. Let's take example of piston. Now piston we are well aware. So it is a core part of an engine, of an automobile engine. Now suppose we have to design a piston for an automobile or for a machine. In automobile, you know that within the engine cylinder, combustion takes place. High pressurized gases are there. A good amount of heat is there. So this all comes on to the piston. So the piston first shall be mechanically safe. It shall have good mechanical strength. Why it shall have good mechanical strength? Because it has to bear heavy amounts of mechanical load. So that's why it should be mechanically strong. So in addition to the mechanical strength, the piston shall also be strong enough to bear good amount of heat generated during the combustion. So means to design a piston, you have to have two aspects, that is thermal aspect and design aspect. So if your piston is strong mechanically and thermally, then only it can be used in the machines. Similarly, we have other examples also. We have an engine cylinder, as I just told you. So numerous examples are there. Turbine blades, turbines we know, and turbine blades also they should be strong enough, and they should have good mechanical strength. Also, they should have good heat dissipating capacity and heat bearing capacity. And pressure cooker, a very common example in our houses. Daily we encounter this pressure cooker. So it should be able to withhold that amount of pressure, good amount of pressure. Pressure means that is a sort of a mechanical load. Apart from that, it should be the material should be able to uh, withstand that amount of heat also. So numerous examples. We have numerous examples. Boilers, again a very common example. Heavy boilers are there in industries. Big machines are there. Heavy boilers are there. So in all these parameters, your machine shall be strong mechanically as well as thermally. So we have number of examples. So this was just to make you aware about the relevance of the different categories what we have just discussed. So let's move ahead. So I would like to go for some classification. So as we classified mechanical engineering into several groups, similarly every subject, even I will say every topic has its own classification. So the purpose of the classification is to simplify the subject. So we should always uh, thoroughly understand the classification. So that's very important. So engineering mechanics has been generally classified as particle mechanics, rigid body mechanics, and mechanics of deformable bodies. So here you can see particle mechanics and rigid body mechanics. So generally it is normally known as rigid body mechanics only. So here we assume that every body is rigid. So once you take the body to be rigid, we classify it as statics and dynamics. Now statics we know. Here we deal with the forces, we study the behavior of forces, we just learn how to deal with the forces, but assuming that all the bodies are at rest. So that is what we do in statics. So when you come to dynamics, the word itself clarifies dynamics means when all the bodies are in motion. But again, to simplify further, this dynamics have been subclassified into kinematics and kinetics. Now, kinematics means you deal with the motion parameters, you deal with equations of motion, but without considering their cause of motion. So means forces we have studied in statics, but we hardly bother about motion parameters in statics. We only study statics or forces over there. In kinematics, we study motion parameters, but we don't bother about forces, that is cause of motion. So, but in kinetics, we go for a full-fledged analysis. Now, it depends upon the given situation. You can use for the forces, whatever you have learned about forces or about motion parameters. So that is how this mechanics has been classified. Now, this is applicable only for rigid bodies. Or a rigid body means body which cannot be deformed. But on the other part, here we see we have written mechanics of deformable bodies. This is more practical. So majority of the bodies are deformable. I will say body, or in other words, I will say bodies are deformable only. So to study this mechanics of deformable bodies, what we need a thorough understanding of the subject strength of materials. So that was the sole objective of taking this classification, just to tell you the importance of this subject. Now let's move ahead. Let's see what strength of material is in simple words. As the name as the name indicates, strength of material. Here you can see the word two words are there, very important word, strength and materials. So this strength corresponds to the ability of the material to bear or to withstand load or stress up to a failure point or till it fails. the amount of load it can bear up to the failure point. So that failure may take place by yielding or by fracture. Yielding means deformation, the beginning of the deformation. The material yields, the material has deformed, or the material has completely fractured. Fracture means failed. Now, so this was about strength. Now, when you talk about materials, we focus more on the properties of the material. No, some of the very common properties we know. The materials, isotropic materials, orthotropic materials, transversely isotropic materials, and anisotropic materials. So it is worth speaking. We have isotropic and anisotropic. Further, this orthotropic or transversely or isotropic that can be categorized into these two, under these two headings. So isotropic material, we know the material which exhibits similar properties or similar value of properties in all the directions. So that material is said to be an isotropic material. As an example, we can say glass or metals. Some of the metals are the example of this isotropic material. Now, just opposite to it, it is called anisotropic material. So we can guess it here. What does it mean? It is the opposite of isotropic. So here, anisotropic material, it's but obvious, the material which exhibits change in the properties with the change in the direction of the objects. So isotropic, there is no change, properties are same in every direction, but in anisotropic, properties do change in different directions, along different directions. Then coming to orthotropic material. Now this orthotropic material basically has three orthogonal planes of symmetry. And along these three principal directions, this material will have different properties. This material will show different properties. So this material shows different properties along three principal directions. Now coming to transversely isotropic material. Now in this material or in this material there is a direction about which if you rotate this material there won't be any change in the properties. Means there is no change in the properties about that axis. So these are some of the properties of materials. Now I think it is quite clear the name of the subject, why it is strength of material. So this is all we have to do. You have to understand the strength of the material under different categories of properties. So now, so let's discuss some of the very basic assumptions which we shall consider in our subject, strength of materials. Because these assumptions play a great role, maybe in any subject. Because our main intention is to develop a component which is to be used in the practical applications. So some of the things which because we cannot take all the realistic conditions and design a subject. So we try to approximate them. For that we need to go for some assumptions. So we'll discuss that. So what are those assumptions? See, so one is the continuum. That means, so whatever material you are selecting, we assume it to be a continuum material. Now, what does this mean? Continuum. So it basically refers to that the whole matter in the material or in the body under consideration is uniformly distributed, or is continuously distributed. Means the matter in the body is continuously distributed, or in other words, we can say the matter fills the entire region of that material. So this is called continuum material. So this we assume. In reality, it is not possible, but we assume, we approximate, and it has done well so far. Then the material is isotropic. So this is I've already discussed in the previous slide, but again, just to brush up, the material which have similar value of properties or similar properties in all the direction. That is called isotropic material. Then comes homogeneous. The material shall be homogeneous. So homogeneity basically refers to the uniformity in the composition, of the material. It is uniform throughout. That is called homogeneity or a homogeneous material. Again, an important assumption. As an example, we can see uh, a variety of materials are there which are taken to be homogeneous. Some metals are there, glass is there, ceramics is there, some resins are there, numerous materials are there. So again, to sum it up, we assume or we consider those material which are linear unimodular. So linear unimodular refers to that they have same modulus, same constant in tension as that compression. Then whatever material we are considering that it is free from cracks. There is no crack in the material. That's what we assume. Yes, we don't go for exotic materials. Now, what are exotic materials? The materials which are the materials which the properties of which cannot be anticipated, because they exhibit unexpected behavior once they are subjected to some sort of a mechanical loading. So those materials are called exotic materials, and we are not considering exotic materials here. So these are some of the assumptions. Now, strength of material, as has been written here, it is the basis for designing any structure or any machine component. See, our sole objective of a design, or the sole objective of the designer, is to prepare a safe component or structure which is to be used in some practical application. It shall not fail. That's very important. So designer has to ensure the strength and safety of that uh, component. So this material forms the basis. Now you can see two words, structure and machine component. Now structure, basically this word is a very common word for civil engineers. This basically is used in civil engineering, this word, most commonly. And machine component is used in mechanical engineering. So this subject is the core subject of civil engineering as well as of mechanical engineering. One of the very important subjects. So let's study the very basic cycle. As I was telling you, that the designer has to ensure the safety of the component which has been designed. So our objective is to design a machine component or a structure which will be subjected to some sort of external loading once it is in use. Now this external loading, now so whole science is there, how you apply load on the machine component. So not a science, but full uh, details are there of different type of loading. Some of the types I will quote here. This external loading may be axial. What is axial loading? When you apply load parallel to the axis of the body. Then that may be bending. When you apply load perpendicular to the axis of the body, it will cause bending in the body. Torsion, when you apply load tangent to the axis of the body, it will twist the body. So similar, we have impact loading, we have fatigue loading. So or you can have a combination of these loading also. That's called combined loading. So this is all what we will be going through in strength of materials. So that is what we study in strength of materials. Very important, because these are the loadings to which a component is subjected to when it is in use. Then once your component is subjected to external load, the material will resist. So that resistance may be in terms of forces or movements. These forces and movements we study in engineering mechanics. Then after you have these resistances, so it will lead to, or they will lead to, stresses and strains. So which we will study what are the stresses and strain basic definition in the coming slides. So as of now, So these internal forces and movements will lead to stress and strain. And for the designer, this is of most importance. The results of these stress and strains are to be analyzed thoroughly, and then a designer reaches to a solution whether the design component is safe or it has failed. So this is a very basic cycle you can see of a design. Or let me put this design or strength of material in three words. Just remember these words: load, stress, and strain. This is all. This is strength of material, or this is design. Rather, it is strength of material basically. When you apply load on the material will exhibit or show some sort of a stresses, and stress will lead to some sort of a strain, and then you can decide whether your material is safe or not. So load, stress, and strain. Just remember that. So the load or the forces, that's one and same thing. Let's see what is a simple stress. It is the internal resistance offered per unit area of the material to the external load. This is called a simple stress. So it is the nothing but the resistance being offered by the material. When you take it per unit area, it is called stress. Let me take an example. What I have taken here, I have shown you two components. One component is subjected to tensile load. This is tensile load along the axis of the body, and the other component is subjected to compressive load again along the axis of the body. So what will happen here? Once these components are subjected to these external loads, internal resistance will develop within the material. Let's see. So these are the internal resistances. On this side to this pull, the material has shown a pull. It's a resistance. This side, if you take pull, the material has shown a pull. So the pull gets pull in terms of resistance, and the push get push in terms of resistance. Or in other words, we can say, if you say this is the external load and this is the stress, so a material can have tensile stress, a material can have a compressive stress. It depends upon the external loading. So mathematically, the stress is defined as it has been mentioned earlier also, force per unit area. Now, why this word average stress is being used here? See, practically what happens, if you take a machine component, let's say this is a machine component and this is external load. You can have various loadings, not only single load. Let me say this may be one more external load. You can have multiple external loads. Now to this external load, if you take a section within the material, now this is a cross section. If you view it from a side, let's say this is the cross section of the material. So this material is exhibiting some sort of resistance. Now this cross section is having infinite points. You can see this cross section having infinite points. I'm trying to show you here. This is having infinite points. And resistance, or let's say a force, the resisting force or stress is shown by every point, not only by one point, shown by every point. All the points will exhibit some sort of a resistance. So to sum up, if you take, we consolidate it for the whole section, so that's why we term it as a average stress. This is very, very important. Once you understand that. So this average stress term is used because of this only. So let's move ahead. The SI unit of stress is newtons per mm square, or newtons per meter square, or Pascal, or megapascals. These are the SI units. Now, very commonly two terms have been used. It's called true stress and engineering stress. Now, what is a true stress? So let me read it. The area of the cross section usually decreases with the increase in elongation, and the stress calculated using that instantaneous area is called true stress. I will try to show you here. Let's say, as this is a specimen which is subjected to a tensile load, as I've already told you. So what will happen here? Let's suppose this material is ductile. It has the ability to elongate. So because of this load, it will elongate. Let's suppose this material has elongated, and this is the final shape of that material. It is not curved, it is straight. I'm not able to draw it straight. So I'm just trying to show you here that it has elongated. The material has elongated. So what is happening here? You can see this area, this cross-section area has decreased. You can see this area has decreased. Now, if you calculate stress by taking this area, decreased area, so that will be true stress. So that area, now it depends. Uh, Wherever you want to calculate the area. So wherever word basically indicates, I will tell you there is a phenomenon. For a tensile material, so if you elongate the tensile material, what will happen? Let's say there is a sort of a necking phenomena taking place. I will try to show you here. This we will study in detail in coming lectures also. So this is the same bar has been elongated under this tensile load. You can say within the material, the area is reduced, and finally this neck sort of has been developed. It's called necking. So there is a variation in the degree in the cross-sectional area. So at any instant, if you want to calculate the stress, at that instant calculate that area and divide the load by that area, you will get true stress. Now on the other side, we have engineering stress. So which is being used in majority of the engineering applications. So this is calculated by dividing the load acting on the specimen on the component by the initial cross-section area. It is called engineering stress. One important note is there. We all very well we know about this principle of transmissibility of force. This we have studied in engineering mechanics. See, for a rigid body, this we have used this principle. This principle states that the force, if you shift it, you go on shifting that force without changing its line of action. It won't change its impact on the rigid body. There won't be any change in the impact of this force on the rigid body. So that is true only for rigid bodies, but it cannot be taken for deformable bodies. And now we are dealing with deformable bodies. So that's why this principle of transmissibility of force is not to be considered for deformable bodies. Now coming to strain. Again, the last component of that cycle, load, stress and strain. Important component. Now what is a strain? The change in the original dimension takes place when a body is subject to some external force. So that I have shown you in the previous slide also. And when you take that the ratio of change dimension to the original dimension, it is known as strain. So that dimension be length or width or any other dimension. The change dimension to the original dimension, that is called strain. So mathematically, it is again the ratio of change dimension to the original dimension. Since we have only same dimension, there won't be any unit. It is dimensionless. Again, here also we have two terms: true stress and true strain and engineering strain. On the same lines, what we have discussed in true stress. I will take the same example: the continuous decrease in the cross-sectional area. So the length is also decreasing, the gauge length. Now, what is this gauge length basically? Uh, Say if this is a tensile specimen, you have a specimen. Say I will try to show you here. Say let's say this is a specimen. You will mount it on some machine, let it be a universal testing machine. You want to apply tensile load. Let's say forget machine. We have applied a tensile load. So the extreme length, this length, these are basically not participating in the loading. These sort of rectangular blocks, what you see here, these are supports, and this length is participating. This length will be participating in the load. This is called gauge length. This is called gauge length. Now, When the load is applied, this gauge length will decrease. Sorry, gauge length will increase, and it will keep on changing. So at an instant, if you want to find the true strain, so you have to take the rate of instantaneous change in gauge length to the instantaneous gauge length. Means at that very instant, you find the gauge length and you find the change in gauge length. Take their ratio, it will be true strain. Then what is engineering strain? In this case, it is calculated by dividing the total change in gauge length by the initial gauge length, and it is called engineering strain. So these are the basic definition of your true strain and engineering strain. So what we have discussed, say what is simple stress, we have discussed what is your simple strain. Come to the last slide of this lecture. I have tried to show you a curve, stress strain curve. So this is the relation between stress and strain. For different materials, different stress strain curve have already been designed, and they are still being designed, still being evaluated, because this curve helps in designing a component. From a stress strain relationship, you can have the idea of where is the yield point, what is the failure point. So again, this stress strain curve I will discuss in the coming lecture in detail. So my objective here is to just show you the difference between in the behavior of a true stress strain curve and that of an engineering stress strain curve. So this curve is for ductile material, the material which can elongate. So for that material, the value of true stress strain is higher than that of engineering stress strain. The true stress strain curve may come beneath engineering stress strain curve also. It may come beneath it also. It depends upon the material now. Say for the compressive applications, it may come down to that of the value may be down to that of engineering stress strain. Now here, what is the objective of having this true stress and engineering stress strain? See, the engineering stress strain, it helps designers to learn about the capability of the material to withstand load, say in tension, before the specimen starts showing unstable behavior. So it gives you the wholesome value of the material. Or as I've shown you that necking phenomena taking place. So in that way, we can say that the engineering stress gives us the indication of the beginning of that necking process. So it gives you wholesome idea. But true stress strain curve, it gives you very specific value. Again, I will say, so if you want to characterize the mechanical properties, so engineering stress strain curves becomes very handy for us. It is very simple. It gives you the we can have the average value from it, and we can design the component. But when you are very specific, you want to study the failures in detail, where at what point the failure has taken place. So for those things, you have to go for true stress strain curves. So this is all what have I have with this within in this lecture. So hope to see you in the coming lectures also. So if you have any suggestion or any query, you can drop a message, or you can contact me through my email also. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you all.